Congressional leaders scrambling to get a debt deal done before our nation defaults. And they met with the president at the White House earlier today. Sources now telling Fox News that House Republican leadership may release a plan this weekend. Still, some analysts say that the longer this all drags on, the more both sides lose politically. Here now, Ford O'Connell, who is chairman of the Civic Forum PAC and former director for rural outreach for John McCain's presidential campaign, and Christy Setzer, president of New Heights Communications, who served as spokeswoman for former Vermont Governor Howard Dean. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So as we start here, people are not happy. Let's take a look at two Washington Post polls that just came out. They're not happy with either the president or members of Congress. Now, the poll, if we have it, that talked about the president first: economy, budget deficit, taxes, disapprove in all three categories. Similar for Republicans. Also disapprove across the board: the economy, the budget deficit, and taxes. So who has the most to lose if there is no agreement and the country defaults? I'll begin with you, Christy.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Heather. It's going to be an absolute calamity, not just for President Obama or Speaker Boehner, but most of all for the American people, because they're really the ones who are going to lose out if we default on our debt. Millions of people will lose their jobs. We're not going to be able to pay our troops fighting overseas. And millions of seniors who are waiting on Social Security and Medicare checks may not get them. And that's all because Republicans are not willing to give up on giving tax breaks to billionaires and corporations.
What do you think, Ford? What do you have to say about that?
Well, the president wants to be Captain America on this issue, but he looks like Duck Dodger, to be perfectly honest with you. Look, if we get downgraded, we're going to lose more jobs. It's a lose-lose situation for both parties, but unfortunately, Republicans are going to wind up shouldering more of the blame because the media is rooting for President Obama. That's just the reality of the situation. We have to get it done because jobs and the economy are what matter to Americans.
And President Obama, he came out Friday. He said that time has run out. And then House Speaker Boehner, he came out and he said more of the same. So is this becoming basically a he said, she said political blame game now? I mean, where do we go from here, Christy?
Well, first, I just want to agree and say that I do absolutely believe that the Republicans are going to shoulder more of the blame if this deal doesn't get done. But it's absolutely not because of the media. It's because Americans know that Republicans are the ones who caused this debt in the first place through two unfunded wars. And again, these tax cuts for millionaires. And now they are trying to, again, hold our economy hostage by again, trying to put forward these
Christy,
same tax cuts.
Just out of curiosity, what do you consider a millionaire? You yourself, what do you consider a millionaire?
I consider people who have millions of dollars as millionaires.
All right, so maybe not $250,000 a year and above?
I think that, more than 90+% of people do not actually make that, would be thrilled to. I think that, the people who are shouldering the blame on this deal are going to be the most vulnerable among us, the people that really rely on Medicare checks and Social Security checks.
Christy, taxes and regulation are killing the economy. You guys won't admit it. Okay, if we keep taxing, we keep regulating, we're going to have no growth. It's that simple. You guys make this way too complicated. The bottom line is taxes and regulations are killing this economy, and this president's raised the debt in 2 years more than the last guy did in 8 years. You got to be kidding me.
All right, Ford, there were hints that leaders may be narrowing in on the plan that Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid have been working on, maybe a smaller plan. But this alert just coming across, apparently, U.S. Democratic leaders saying they will not accept any short-term agreement on deficit reduction and raising the nation's borrowing limit. That coming from Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid saying that on Saturday. So basically, does that mean no small-term deal? Ford?
I think it should be.
Ford,
Go ahead,
I'll start
Christy.
with you. No, Ford, you go ahead.
The bottom line is Harry Reid once again is playing politics. He wants to hold on to the Senate. And if we have a short-term deal, his Senate leadership's threatened, as is President Obama's reelection. The bottom line is we're probably going to wind up with a short-term deal, but this is the issue of the decade, and we're going to return to it. And until we are fiscally wise about how we spend money in this country, we have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. So that's where we are, and the American people are suffering because of it.
And Christy, do you think the lack of the big deal or the grand bargain undermines President Obama's brand?
Yes, in some ways. I mean, I believe that President Obama has shown that he is someone who's willing to get big things done, take on the big issues. He's shown that with the historic health care reform bill that he was able to get passed when many other presidents were not. And Republicans know this as well as anybody, and that's why they're throwing up roadblocks at every opportunity just to prevent him from getting something big done.
How about this? If by some miracle of miracles we do reach an agreement in time, who gets the credit? Not necessarily who's to blame, but who gets the credit if we do manage to do this? Ford?
Well, the media will make it out that President Obama's leadership is once again won out. But the reality is we're going to have to compromise, and that's just how it is. But tax hikes are not a solution. We're going to have to go dollar for dollar, debt ceiling to debt, and cut it, and then we're going to have to move on from there.
And what do you think, Christy?
I think that President Obama will be seen as the responsible leader in these negotiations. Republicans have walked away from the table. They've left him at the altar, if you will, several times
You guys are
during
in
this
control
debate.
of Washington, not us.
And I think Americans are seeing exactly the irresponsible lengths that Republicans are willing to go to during this debate.
I don't know. I think both sides have walked away from the table. President Obama himself walking away from the table as well.
President Obama has bent over backwards during this debate. He's willing to put forward up to $3 trillion in spending cuts, which included painful cuts from our side to Social Security and Medicare, things that would not actually make the Democratic base happy. But he was willing to do that in order to save our economy from absolute ruin. Republicans were not willing to do the same.
I don't know. I think the American public, I think the bickering will matter when it comes to the 2012 elections, if nothing else, from both sides. Ford?
Well, we're worried about the future. We don't want to kick the can down the road. This is the issue of the decade, and we've got to be fiscally responsible. If not, we're going to become Greece. We are 2 steps away from Greece. When we get downgraded, we'll be 1 step away from Greece. We have to wake up, because at the end of the day, this is tied to jobs and the economy. And if America wants to return itself to greatness, we're going to have to pay attention to this issue very carefully.
All right. Well, I have to wrap you up there. Christy Setzer, Ford O'Connell, thank you for joining us.
You.
Ford, you can explain to me later who Duck Dodger is. I have no idea. Who is Duck
Daffy
Dodger?
Duck's character.
Do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay.